Hello, you're watching Ruslan Belov's channel, and today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of July 5th, 2025. A large number of developments have occurred today, so let's get started. Let's begin with the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. I'd like to remind you that just a few days ago, the Russian side launched another offensive. And while everyone is still speculating whether this is merely a show of force, a demonstration that Russia can conduct offensives in this exposed area, as we understand, or whether this is, in fact, a genuine offensive aiming to cut off the entire northeastern salient of the Kharkiv region. Roughly speaking, within the square bounded by Vovchansk, the Pechennihy Reservoir, the Oskil River, and the state border between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. It's still hard to say. As of July 5th, the only thing we know for sure is that a series of massive drone strikes, Geran-type drones, hit the town of Kyiv, with 12 explosions recorded. Some sources familiar with the situation reported that fuel tanks were blown up and destroyed. These were fuel tanks that presumably were intended to support the AFU contingent and garrison in the northeastern sector. Naturally, this may now cause serious logistical problems for Ukrainian forces. At the same time, today we're seeing new map updates around the settlement of Mylov. Here, an independent mapmaker has slightly extended some of the forest lines, small wooded areas now shown under Russian control. But nothing major has changed. 3 days ago, a Russian flag was raised in Mylov. There was video evidence. Then came some progress in forested areas. Now we're seeing only minor adjustments. It's hard to tell whether the offensive is still ongoing or has stalled. Meanwhile, the offensive continues along the Oskilok River. And early this morning, some pro-Russian analysts familiar with the situation on this section, especially the actions of the Zapad, West military grouping, reported the beginning of movement from Figolivka towards Petro-Ivanivka. All of this, in essence, forms a large triangle, the main triangle of active hostilities. This is where the primary offensive is developing. Russian forces are making advances along all three edges of this triangle, although not yet penetrating deeply. On the other hand, Ukrainian sources have started analyzing the situation, and most military experts have come to the conclusion that the main target of this Russian offensive could be the town of Veliky Burluk. This settlement is located almost at the geographic center of the northeastern part of Kharkiv region. If the Russian army manages to enter and establish full control over the town, raising Russian flags from at least 3 directions, this could lead to a complete collapse of the entire northeastern portion of Kharkiv region. The key is that from Veliky Burluk, the Russian side would be able to control all logistical routes running along the Pechennihy Reservoir, routes going from Kyiv toward Vovchansk. Movement in that area would become extremely dangerous. Also, note that this region is made up of open fields, no forested areas, nowhere to hide. Heavy losses would be inevitable. I'd also like to remind you that over the past week, there have been repeated reports of advances in western Vovchansk. So if we try to piece together the big picture, it appears that the advances in western Vovchansk may not be about fully clearing the city itself, but rather about pushing into the forested area along the Donets River. That's this river. A push here would aim to cut off AFU supply lines from Kharkiv into this northeastern sector, especially across the Siversk Donets River and southwest of Vovchansk. Cutting this artery would render the region entirely inoperable and indefensible. Once again, we must understand that neither Veliky Burluk nor the entire northeastern part of Kharkiv region is the final goal. They represent a key stage in a broader campaign likely aimed at Kupiansk, Balaklia, and ultimately the city of Izium. So this appears to be a preparatory operation for a larger-scale offensive, possibly even toward the city of Kharkiv. Now let's move to the Siversk sector. There's a minor update today. Here's what the map looked like yesterday, by the end of July 4th, 2025. Today, we've received reports of Russian forces advancing through forested areas toward the village of Serebryanka. These are some of the images published by Ukrainian sources today. Numerous explosions and strikes, and one geolocation was confirmed at this point. Looking at the map, we can see that Russian forces are still some distance away from Serebryanka. There are still Ukrainian positions in this pocket. Nevertheless, the Russian army continues to advance gradually. Now we move to probably the most important and interesting sector. The Konstantinovka front. Every morning begins with the thought that today might finally be the day when the decisive battle for this town begins. But then each new day arrives, and the main assault is postponed for another 24 hours. Despite these delays, we can see that Russian forces are steadily getting closer to the outer buildings and structures of Konstantinovka itself. The Russian army is especially close now from the east and northeast, namely from the direction of Chasiv Yar. Yesterday, the Ministry of Defense released a very interesting report, as usual listing numbers by different directions. The most important line published by the Russian Ministry of Defense was the statement that the Yug, South military grouping, had fully cleared the settlement of Predtekin. This is a small village located southwest of Stupochki, or east of Konstantinovka. Yesterday, most map makers updated their maps accordingly. Some refused to color in Predtekin under Russian control because this was one of those MOD reports not supported by objective video evidence. Usually, confirmation comes via footage of Russian soldiers raising flags in multiple spots, which allows mapmakers to confirm visually. Honestly, our update was also based solely on the geographic boundary of Predtekin, because we still don't have precise information on the front line's exact location there. Still, the Ministry of Defense made the claim, and we understand that from Predtekin to a major AFU strongpoint along the H32 highway, it's only a matter of meters. The distance from Predtekin to the first buildings in Konstantinovka is now less than 2.5 kilometers. From Predtekin southward to the town and those defensive strongpoints located along a small ridge, the distance is under 1 kilometer. So it's currently not possible to produce a video clearly showing Russian soldiers raising flags across different parts of Predtekin. There may be 1 million Ukrainian drones flying over Predtekin right now. It's possible that all Ukrainian drones at this moment are concentrated over Predtekin, preventing the Russian army from advancing any further. Because right now, holding control over Predtekin essentially means the collapse of the front line southeast and east of Konstantinovka. The pocket between the settlements of Oleksandro Shultine and Bilahora no longer exists. It may still exist on some maps or in the minds of some people, but realistically, it has ceased to exist for at least a month now. Holding the line in such a semi-encirclement, effectively under operational encirclement, is no longer possible. It's extremely difficult. Moreover, we must clearly understand that combat in this area is not something new. Back in 2022, assault units entering Bakhmut also passed through this area. So this entire defense line was originally constructed with the assumption that any offensive would come from the south or southeast, perhaps from the east. But no one expected, and the defensive lines were not designed in such a way to repel an offensive from the north, that is, from Predtekin. So the defensive lines here are simply not ready to face Russian forces coming from that direction. That gives the Russian army an extra momentum in their advance on this sector. We are waiting for new geolocated footage. Something may soon be released by the Ministry of Defense or sources affiliated with it, or with Russian military groupings. But this pocket is basically gone. It no longer exists, if the information about Predtekin is accurate and true. However, the most important updates don't just come from Predtekin. There are also changes around the town of Chasiv Yar. Today, Ukrainian sources published footage of FPV drone strikes targeting Russian positions along the entire Konstantinovka-Chasiv Yar axis. There are many episodes, numerous strikes, some geolocated, some not, some of interest, others irrelevant. One of the strikes was confirmed in the area of workshop number 2, marking the complete clearance of that neighborhood. Summing up the situation in Chasiv Yar as a whole, currently only one neighborhood remains untouched by combat, the Zemlyanki district, the southernmost part of the city. However, even there, footage from just yesterday showed heavy Russian artillery strikes on the remaining high-rise buildings, which are already nearly destroyed. This clearly indicates preparations for combat operations. In my view, 1 month is more than enough time to fully clear Chasiv Yar. The situation here will be resolved within a month, that's almost certain. Possibly even faster. The Ministry of Defense may not rush in order to avoid the kind of situation we saw in Toretsk, when the MOD announced full control of the city after its clearing. But then the Ukrainian side launched a counterattack and recaptured 50% of Toretsk after which it took another 3 months to finally secure the city. It's very likely they will not allow a repeat of that scenario in Chasiv Yar, so until there is full confidence, perhaps until Russian troops reach Chervony and Podilska, or establish positions in the southeastern part of Konstantinovka, no official announcement of Chasiv Yar's full clearance is expected. But again, we may only be a few days away. We'll be watching. Now let's move to the Pokrovsk sector of the front. As for Pokrovsk, panic is already spreading among AFU units on the ground. They say that if the situation does not stabilize soon, we may start hearing the phrase operational encirclement of Pokrovsk and of the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration as early as July. The Russian army is extremely close to achieving this. Fighting continues for control over the towns of Mykolaievka, Novoekonomichne, Razina, and Koptyevo. Today we received the first confirmed footage of close-range contact northwest of Koptyevo. Based on this footage, some minor map adjustments were made, although it's clear that, according to some cartographers, the front line has already advanced far forward. Fighting continues. Ukrainian forces are putting up fierce resistance. Everyone clearly understands how critical this area is. Razin, Fedorivka, Boykivka, Novotoretske, Mayak, all these settlements are the key to the entire Donbas operation. If this area is lost, it will automatically lead to the operational encirclement of Pokrovsk, open the way to Druzhkivka, and possibly signal the beginning of combat operations around Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Now we move to the Dnipropetrovsk direction, where the situation is also developing very unfavorably for the armed forces of Ukraine. Today, the Russian side finally destroyed the bridge near the village of Iskra. As you can see, the bridge is now completely gone. Earlier footage had shown it was damaged by FAB bombs or Kh-38 missiles. But today we have the first confirmed video showing the total destruction of the bridge. This was the only bridge across the Volchya River that the AFU could use to support their troops in places like Iskra or Andriivka Klevtsova, Zeleny High, Novokharkivska, Hrushkivska, Tolstoy, Podubne, Myrna, and Voskresenka. That road is now gone, that bridge is gone, and Ukrainian units, at least in this sector, are now in a very difficult position. A decision must be made urgently about what to do next. Meanwhile, Russian forces are actively advancing. It's possible that in the next few hours, not days but hours, the Ministry of Defense and the Vostok military grouping may confirm the full clearing of Podubne. That would automatically mean the fall of Myrn. Currently, the Russian army continues its advance toward the settlement of Voskresenka. The village is currently under heavy aerial bombardment. Airstrikes are softening up the area in preparation for an assault. The Russian army is advancing very quickly here, and so far, the Ukrainian side has been unable to stabilize the front line. And that's all for now, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and all the best to you.